has been a minute since Simpsons had proper action figures out on store shelves. They're back now, this time from Jakks Pacific. I've got Homer Simpson here. Let's open him up. Now, as we open Homer here, there's a couple things. That you have seen Simpsons action figures in the past before. They came to us in, oh gosh, when was it? Probably the late 90s from Playmates, the people who did The Simpsons. If what I'm remembering of these is accurate, and I didn't have any of these growing up or even collected them, I just enjoyed watching the show, is that they didn't have a whole lot of articulation. The gimmick with them is they had a sound chip that, based on whatever play sets, they would have different interactions. These look very articulated, and I'm curious to see the difference here. I'm struggling with this. Struggling on this side over here. What's going on? But now the ones that I'm totally forgetting about. Super 7 did a Simpsons run, but that didn't last very long, and so I don't know how Jakks did it, but they got these on store shelves very quickly for about $12, which is a great value, I would say, for this, like, about 5-inch toy line that we typically see for going a little bit more expensive. So here's Homer out of the package. He's still in his bubble. He's tied down in a few places. He's got the figure, he's got the box of donuts, and a loose donut that fits in the box of donuts. So let's get him out of this part. Now, the interesting thing is that the bubble is glued onto this cardboard, which makes me wonder why this wasn't put on like a traditional card or anything like that. I just thought it'd be kind of interesting. Not that I'm an inbox collector or anything like that, but just having some of those vintage-inspired packaging, especially from a franchise that has been around since the 90s, well, late 80s, early 90s, it would definitely seem fitting to have that old school packaging. The box of donuts, here it flips open, it's got a lid on there. If we can get this focused in, a little bit difficult, but you can see that there is a tiny donut that's loose. It has a bite mark out of it, like Homer's been having a snack, and it will fit very nicely into the donut box. It looks slightly different, but overall, if you were just to glance at it, you wouldn't be able to tell that only one of these was available to take out. It almost seems like the whole thing was either part of the accessory, or they could all come out. It's nice to have additional accessories, especially when they go with a character that are somewhat custom or very memorable for the character. I think the donut box works really well with Homer, and from what I've seen from some of the other pieces of the Simpsons line, that other memorable characters have things as well. So Bart has his skateboard, for instance. Here we have Homer out of the box. You know, I was immediately impressed with some of the articulation of this figure right off the bat. So he does have shoulder movement, he does have elbow movement, wrist movement, and his head does swivel around. Also, the waist, single joint at the knees. The ankles have a little bit of wiggle to them, which I wasn't really expecting. So that's going to be able to help us with posability and things like that. This is a good-looking Homer Simpson. If the joints weren't so pronounced, this would look very accurate to what I think of when I think of Homer Simpson on the Simpsons cartoon show. I'm having fun wiggling him, posing him, moving him around. That bodes really well, so let's get a little closer look at Homer. When it comes to the Simpsons, Homer in particular, you want something that's expressive. And I think with the range of articulation that we have with Homer here, you can make expressive poses, where I feel that the character is deficient and that he doesn't have the same level of expressiveness is in the face. Now, you can argue that Homer often has a blank stare, but he will at least move his mouth from time to time. So having just a tiny little hinge on a jaw so that his mouth could open and close would have been a nice addition to this character. Doubly so because he came with a box of donuts that he can't really even eat. His mouth is just closed. I can't imagine a Homer Simpson not wanting to eat a donut. When it comes to the accessories, the donut box, while very fitting for the character, has a specific problem. It's that you can't really have Homer hold it anywhere. It is very awkward, and when you try to put it in his hand, it just won't fit. The single donut, however, fits very nicely in his hands, and the hands in particular are a softer plastic so that it can hold on to some of those more rigid accessories so that it softly closes around it rather than tries to wedge it in there, leaving a point for breakage. The posability on Homer works really well. The joints aren't too stiff, they aren't too loose. You can get Homer in a position that you would want him to be in. But when you start bending them to extreme degrees, you start to see where the seams of the toy are, which again, you can kind of get away with depending on the angle that you rotate, twist, and bend. But if you look at it from another perspective, is that you do start to see how very toy-like this is when the initial impressions of it being in the box are very cartoon-like. Now, honestly, I don't know how you get around that problem, because after all, this is a toy. This is an action figure, so it's going to look to a degree like an action figure. But it's just something to note if you are somebody who's very much a stickler about these types of things. Now, if we focus again on the head of Homer Simpson, he does swivel around, but he doesn't go up and down. That would have been another nice point of articulation to have with Homer. But again, we're looking at a $12 action figure that is, for all intents and purposes, very impressive. It's just when we get up close, when we look at these things in fine detail, we can start to nitpick. Overall, I'm really impressed with Homer Simpson's from the brand new Simpsons line by Jakks Pacific. He makes me want to run out and get more Simpsons characters if I can find them. I feel like I was lucky enough to find this Homer sitting on store shelves the way it was. I think the scale works really well for The Simpsons. It's not too large where it takes up a ton of shelf space, but it's not too small where you can't get a lot of articulation. And the depth of characters that they could pull from in The Simpsons will be impressive to see in this scale. This is a very wonderful, nearly true to show Homer Simpson that has a great range of motion, has a great movement about him, very expressive. There's just a few areas, like the face, that could have used just a tiny bit more expression to make this an absolutely stellar character, but I think for the price point, $12, you really can't go wrong with this. This is a good action figure. So that's everything I know about Homer Simpson, and if you like action figures, I've got a whole bunch of them right over here. Got 6-inch scale stuff. I've got anything from like Lego minifig on up to 6-inch scale. So we're going to be talking a lot more about action figures in the future. Also, just action things. So blasters. Blasters are very action-filled. I talk a lot about those too. So you're going to want to hit that subscribe button to see what I have coming up in the future. If you have any questions about Homer Simpson or try to stump me with some early Simpsons trivia, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. And, for me and Homer here, we'll see you next time.